Hello, thought roomies, and welcome to the show. Man, you guys, what a month it has been. We had a giant storm in Texas. Actually, a great many places had a storm and some very interesting weather, but the city of Austin, we absolutely got shut down for about 7 days. Things were pretty gnarly here. And in the meantime, I was getting the keys to my new apartment and moving in, and also on the tail end of some deep shadow work that I had been engaged in for about 8 weeks before that, really diving into some of my old woundings, things that, I thought I had healed before. And that's often how these things happen, is we work on something and then it goes to sleep for a while. And then it comes back into the spiral of our awareness to be worked on and to be nurtured and to be looked at again. So the last few months were a time of me deeply going into some of my stories around love and relationships and receiving love and cultivating new relationships in my life. And the work never ends. And even though I feel I've done a great deal, there were absolutely some feelings of abandonment, of betrayal coming back from past relationships and even as early as childhood. And it's so important when these things come up to really give them the space. It can be deeply uncomfortable to do that. You can feel like by giving it the space, the fear can be that this becomes the pervasive state of being, or that we get stuck in the emotions. And that doesn't have to be the case. But like any wound that needs to heal, you got to let it air out a little bit. You have to give it space to breathe. You can't will it to heal faster than it wants to. It's like that Trevor Hall song, "You Can't Rush Your Healing." And so for anyone who needs that message today, I wanted to say that just be with what's alive in you today. And I think that as we dive into this episode, you are all going to get some wonderful golden nuggets on how to cultivate more inner peace. But before we dive into that, I want to say that we are in week 10 of 12 with the first cohort of the Conscious Man, and the transformation and growth that we've been seeing together in this special community and collective that I've cultivated is mind-blowing, inspiring, and beyond my wildest dreams for what this community could be. I see the way that these men are stepping up to be in community with each other, to look at their deepest woundings, their deepest fears. And I can see the ripple effects of what's happening here, the friendships that are being cultivated, the improved relationships with their partners, with themselves, with their children. And it is such an honor and a delight to engage in this work. We've got 2 weeks left of this program, and we're actually building a wait list for the next cohort. So if you were hearing about the Conscious Man the first time and it didn't quite feel like it was time, but now you're starting to feel that itch or that call, I'm talking to you. We're building a wait list. I'd love to have you on it and to see if this is going to be a fit for you. We're talking about launching the next cohort in fall of 2021. So it gives you some time, but that wait list is filling up fast. So if that's an opportunity that excites you, I would recommend going on my website, HallieRose.com, and filling out the application for the wait list. In addition, I am opening up a select number of one-on-one coaching spots. If you have been listening to me for a while, if you've been resonating with the messages that I'm putting out into the universe, if you've always felt a call like we were going to know each other or we were going to work together. I want you to pay attention to that and consider going on my website and checking out the process to apply to work together one-on-one. Like I said, spots are limited. I take these coaching relationships very seriously. This is not for people who are just beginning to dabble in personal work, growth, and development. This opportunity is really for people who have done a certain level of personal work. They want to create something that is high impact. They want to use their gifts to be of service to the world. And they recognize that they've reached a threshold with how much they can do on their own. And they're ready to step into investing in themselves and investing in the mentorship that's going to bring their big vision into the world, into fruition, and bring their lives to the next level. So if you're interested in that, I want you to visit hallierose.com and fill out the application, and someone from my team will get back to you. And who knows, you and I just might end up on a phone call discussing your dreams and your future. So today on the show, we have the amazing Charles Clay. He's a coach, speaker, author, and a new friend of mine. Today we talk about how to cultivate inner peace. We talk about something called NeuroKinetic Therapy, and we dive into what is muscle testing and how can we use this in our lives. We talk about the laser focus method. We talk about visioneering and stepping into what Charles calls creator consciousness. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, join me in the thought room with Charles Clay. Charles Clay, welcome to the Thought Room. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, glad to be here.
Yeah, so we're currently sitting here in my brand new apartment, which has nearly zero furniture, and I've just popped up a little cozy spot for us to do this podcast here in Austin, Texas. And you and I met about a month ago now, right?
Yep.
And we were just talking about this before we hit record, but we met at an event that you and your beloved Brandolyn were hosting that I got invited to by a mutual friend. Can you talk about what you guys held? It was actually one of the most magical evenings I've ever been to. And that's saying a lot because I've been to some really cool events over the years. And there was something so ephemeral and magical and special about the group of people and the container that you guys created for that event. And I think it speaks so much to who the two of you are. So I'd love if you would tell people a little bit about what that was.
Absolutely. Yeah, each one's different. So glad that you attended this last one and felt called to that because it's a changing of the seasons. So just like in our lives, everything's ever changing. And so honoring the season that we're moving from and into the new, just really allowing for that process of grieving in whatever way we feel is in our highest, and then celebrating the new as it comes in. And so just like in nature, as the seasons change, so do our lives. And so it's really, our events are about honoring that and coming back to our connection to nature, to source, and then celebrating that in our events through music, through sound healing, through movement, dance, all the fun things, and wizard cakes.
Yo, the wizard cakes. That was a peak moment for me. And I think that little piece is worth telling because that vignette was, I was standing in that moment. And so it was a friend of yours who did the food for the evening. And like you were saying, the connection to nature, that was some of the most nourishing food I have ever experienced. It was so hearty and gorgeous. And then there's the whole ritual of sitting at those beautiful candlelit tables and literally breaking bread with people, and the ritual of sharing beautiful food from the earth and appreciating it. And it was a total mouthgasm, like every bite of that meal. But one of the things he did was he baked this completely over the top, amazing cake. I can't even remember all the things he was saying in it. He's like, oh yeah, there's elderberry and like flakes of gold, or, it was just like this wild cake. And there was this moment where he put the cake down on the floor and he gave the women, all the women, spoons and forks, and invited us to dive into the cake. And, people were eating it with their hands and just tasting this beautiful creation and then feeding each other. It was so special.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something so simple, yet when you enjoy it like a food connoisseur and really present with it and the experience of sharing it, it becomes something entirely novel.
And the element of play. Like, when's the last time you've been invited to eat a cake off the floor with your hands and feed it to your loved ones around you? Like, that was so fun. And I love that. It's like, how can we create more of that in our lives,
Absolutely.
For
that
sure.
is vacation vibration, finding the novelty in every experience. It's always there.
Beautiful. So I love to contextualize who you are, which is so much. The more that I learn about you, mainly through people in your sphere who just love you and adore you and have all these beautiful things to say about you, I realized, the depth of who you are. And I knew the moment I met you, I was like, I need to get this guy on the podcast. But then a few weeks later, Brandolyn invited me to your birthday gathering, and I had the opportunity to hear your friends speak about you, which is just such a cool way to get to know somebody. It's like, what do the people around them have to say about them? So thank you for the honor of being a part of that and your birthday ritual. But let's give people listening a little glimpse into where you come from. So maybe a piece of your story that, as I'm asking this question, kind of immediately comes to mind as something potent that kind of set you on this trajectory.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Washington State. That's where my family's at. And my background has been in kinesiology. That's my degree from Washington State. And I've always been fascinated by the most incredible technology on the planet, in my opinion, these human bodies that we get to call home. And so I was a fitness trainer, health coach, and then had a huge awakening and realized that pain was a big teacher for me. And that came while I was snowboarding up in Mammoth about 10 years ago. And it was a blizzard. So there's hardly anybody out on the mountain, and they shut down the lifts. So it felt like we were the last ones up there, and there was snow coming every which direction. So you could barely see the blur of a tree like 5 feet in front of you. So a couple of my friends and I were like, well, just stay low, be ready for anything. And it was fun. Halfway down the mountain though, I went off a jump and I didn't know it was there. And I remember like everything slowing down. I freaked out and landed and smashed my back pretty bad. And I remember just this intense level of pain, followed by, wow, my friends were like way ahead of me. And so I'm kind of stuck here on this mountain in this blizzard, and I can't move barely without being met by this really the most intense pain I've experienced. And so I found myself like channeling my inner Spartan warrior in that moment, just to click my board off and like sit on it to go down as far as I could, fall over, take a breath or two, and then eventually finding my way down the mountain, only to go see doctors and find out that they recommended that I needed surgery. as soon as possible, or I might never move the same again. So that information was really hard for me to receive. And even in that fight or flight response, I was able to access my intuition and make a deal with myself saying, I am going to learn and try all the natural ways of healing this before I even consider going under the knife and putting my power into someone else. And I'm so glad I made that deal with myself, because that began my self-healing journey. And that was like, I could barely crawl to the bathrooms, stuck in my apartment in San Diego at the time. And I had support, but it was really getting to take a look at all the emotions that I was avoiding, resisting, stuffing down. And, as a health coach, helping people with their health during the week, and then going out on the weekends and stuffing emotions with sex, drugs, and rock and roll and whatever was not in alignment. And so it took, looking back, there was like the universe gave me a little feather of like, hey, you're a little out of alignment. You want to make some shifts here. Didn't pay attention to that. And then it's like getting hit in the head with a brick. Like, wow, this is definitely having some negative consequences, this behavior. I should make some changes, and began to, but they didn't stick. And so I kind of fell back to my old ways. And then it was like getting hit by a Mack truck with the snowboarding incident. And that catalyzed this huge awakening as far as like really going to the depths of these heavy emotions that I was avoiding, like fear, like shame of, not even being able to move, let alone get to work. And so all these, even grief, just really like surrendering and allowing myself to go to the depths of these emotions and feel and experience that allowed for a huge clearing. And in that, I just set the intention and did this meditation by Abraham Hicks. I remember I still share it with people. And the intention for that meditation was to be open to receive all the answers to healing this naturally. And while in that meditation, a friend of mine I hadn't talked to in 2 years sent me a text saying, hey, I heard your back's pretty messed up. Check out NeuroKinetic Therapy. And that was the work of David Weinstock that took me on this rabbit hole to discovering, learning, and connecting so many of the dots from my background in kinesiology and how to get answers from the body. And it was profound what that led me to, because I got to do my first session of NKT, and I walked in looking like a wreck. Like I was in pain. My hips were out to the left. My upper body was over to the right, representing my, how out of balance and how out of alignment I was at that phase in life with my purpose. And so got on the table, found out like, wow, my glutes aren't even firing. She would test those and nothing's happening. And so I'm like, what do you mean my glutes aren't firing? I have huge glutes. She's like, yep, all form, no function. And then she had me clench my jaw, retested the glutes, and all of a sudden they're back online. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So realizing that my jaw, from that impact, that trauma, and even some stuck emotions that we carry in the jaw associated with the limbic system, was blocking that neural pathway to my big guns, the glutes, to help stabilize my hips and spine. And so we found a couple other compensation patterns like that, and showed how to release the muscles that were overfiring and activate the muscles that were offline. And all of a sudden I got off the table and I was like, what? I can move again. Like I started dancing, gave her a big hug, and I had a huge epiphany in that moment, just knowing that this was my path. Like I was finally realizing it. Our biggest challenges also reveal our greatest gifts. And so it was all coming. I realized how it was all happening for me. And then I got to become a neurokinetic therapist, study under David Weinstock, take all his courses, and gain these gifts and these skills to help others do the same. So it's been quite a journey.
This is amazing. And I was sharing with you a little bit before about being raised by two chiropractors, and this sort of somatic awareness and the connection to our emotional body being very present for me. But when you were speaking about surgery, I was thinking about my dad and how he would tell me, oftentimes people will go and they'll have knee pain and they'll be told by a doctor they need to get knee surgery, and they'll go in, they'll have everything filleted open and scraped out and sewn back up, only to find soon after they're still in pain. Things really aren't better. And he said, oftentimes they come to me, chiropractor, and I tell them quite simply that knee was never the problem. It was the alignment. It was the hip that was out to the left, like you said. And they've been walking this way their whole life thinking, oh, it's just the way that I walk and I put stress on this knee joint, but it's about the whole system. And I think that's a great metaphor for really all of life and all of humanity. We get very granular about, no, this is the issue. This is the problem. This person is the problem. This specific event, this thing that I don't like is the problem. But forgetting that the pieces are a part of a much, much larger whole, and to humble ourselves to recognize that although we are very intelligent, the whole might be so large at times that it is unfathomable and we can't even understand it fully. So to be a student of life and of this experience and being willing to be wrong, and practicing that and being curious about modalities like what you're speaking about right now. So I love if you could, for anyone listening who's never heard the term NeuroKinetic Therapy, if you would just give us a brief synopsis of what that is.
Sure. So even some of the greatest athletes that I work with, there are numerous compensation patterns going on in the body. And there's certain muscles that aren't even firing. They're not getting a signal from the brain to contract and activate in harmony with the rest of the body. And then that means that it's getting stuck somewhere. The energy is being blocked in some way. And so neurokinetic therapy is fascinating because it's a way of muscle testing, getting answers from the body. And once we figure out what's not firing and then where that neurological traffic jam is, then it's really easy to show them how to correct that and how to come back into alignment. And once everything's firing on all cylinders and you restore function in the body, there's no need for the check engine light of pain. And so it's pain is simply sharing us information that is trying to ignite change. Something needs to change to come back into alignment. And so I've had the fortune of helping a lot of people come to me with knee issues that are considering surgery. And they've tried so many things that they're at the end of the road, like this is my last resort. And oftentimes, my practice has evolved. So now we always address the metaphysics first. And it's always important to ask, do you want to heal this? And really let them sit with that. It seems like a simple question, yet some people hold on to that as part of their psyche. As this is, I'm just used to this pain. This is part of me. And they're actually not ready to make the changes to healing that. And so we start with that, and then we drop into some of the metaphysics. Like knee can represent ego. And so, if it's showing up in the right knee, that's the masculine. So it can oftentimes show us, where is the ego getting in front of our path to our high self, or what we want to create, and we're not taking that step forward, like what's holding us back. And so there's a lot more detail in that and specifics, but that's simply what I let them marinate on with the intention of learning the lessons and the blessings of why this is showing up and how it's happening for me. And that is actually what I found, that inquiry often is a shortcut through suffering, through challenges, because it allows you to begin, it's like turning your reticular activation system on to, what can I gain from this? Like, what am I to learn from this moving forward? And you're not going to get that from a surgery, typically, right? You miss out on those lessons and blessings of what this intelligent body is trying to share with you. that's going on in your life that's showing up in the subconscious this way. So it's really fascinating. I geek out on this stuff, and it's amazing. Someone that comes to me with that issue, we find out that it's this little muscle in the back of their knee called the popliteus, which is a really common one that's overfiring for the glutes or the hamstrings. And I call it Napoleon syndrome. It's like this little muscle. It's trying to do all this work for the big guns. Mm-hmm. I show them how to release that muscle and then how to activate the big guns, the muscle group that wasn't firing properly. And all of a sudden they're able to restore alignment, and they feel the pain go away, and they know they're self-empowered now how to continue down that path.
Mm. This is beautiful. And I feel like we cannot underscore this enough. It's like the idea of getting to the root cause, which often, or I would even be so bold to say as always, has an emotional root and component. And something I think about often is, you get a headache. So many people go and the first thing they do is pop an Advil. What you're doing is you're treating the symptom, which is that check engine light that you're saying, that red flag saying, hey, look deeper, something's going on here. Mm-hmm. And instead of being like, maybe I didn't drink enough water today. Maybe my body's dehydrated, not getting enough rest, been staring at a screen for a very long time. I'm not wearing any blue light protection, or this is not great for my posture. I'm rounded forward. We start blaming the body.
Yep.
We're blaming the vehicle for not doing the maintenance, but we're the ones not doing the maintenance on the vehicle. We're like, this, and that's what happens when we get older. We're like, this body is failing me. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure people, and I know people who almost seem like they're reverse aging. Like the more they figure out about how to care for their bodies, the better they look. And this idea that it's just part of getting old and breaking down, like how much of that is real too.
Absolutely. And even the way we talk to ourselves, right? Oftentimes we're our own worst critic, and yet our bodies are the most amazing allies, right? Always showing us what's going on, always finding alignment, each and every cell back to homeostasis and into harmony and balance. And so anything that's out of balance, we can honor that, right? It's like, thank you for this message, and then look a little deeper as to the source of it. And then you can improve this relationship with your body and know that it's always working for us. But when we're talking like, I'm getting old, I'm just breaking down all the time, like you're literally feeding your cells that vibration and that information, and they're just responding accordingly. Mm-hmm. So instead it's like, wow, I feel great. I'm so grateful for this body, and anything that gets in the way of my alignment and my homeostasis and harmony and inner peace is, that means there's something to learn. There's something to gain from it. And so then we don't have to look at our challenges as something to avoid or something that's like, oh my gosh, this is, a path of suffering, when challenges are actually allowing us our greatest growth, right? And even stress is like a means for evolution. So it's important. It's part of our journey. And so as we improve that relationship with our challenges, with stress, and with our body, then all of a sudden you uncover some chief codes to staying young.
Completely. And I love the way that you reframe that about challenge. Some of us walk around this earth like everything is a brick waiting to fall on our head. And that's the way when we walk into a coffee shop, the way we interact with the barista or anybody on the street, or, if we're in our own spiral of our mind of how difficult, how shrunken everything is, how we've got to tumble from one thing into the next, your waking experience of reality is kind of one where you're just in this washing machine cycle of suffering. Mm-hmm. And to choose that, things will happen that will challenge me, but I bless them because it tells me how to fine tune, where to tighten the nuts and bolts. And I was working with a client the other day who's in the process of choosing a really difficult transition for herself, but she knows she needs to leave this job that she's been working in for a long time. And we've been working on this, and we've gotten to the point of, now she's got the letter drafted for her resignation. And it's been in months on this journey, but we were at this point and it was like, it still feels really hard to push send. I said, okay, well, let's go into the fear. Like, what is the fear really around? And she was like, that I'll feel like I made a mistake, and this idea that I have that once I make this decision, I'm going to be freer, I'm going to be happier, I'm going to live that expansive life, and I'm going to open up space for the new thing to come in. She's like, what if I'm the same? Like, what if I'm still broken? Was the underlying fear. And I said, great, excellent. Like, X marks the spot. So the fear is that we do this and the patterns are still the same. Gorgeous, because then we can't avoid the patterns anymore. So one of two things is going to happen. You're going to leave this job and you're going to feel all these expansive feelings that we've been rehearsing in your meditations, that we've been calling in, that we've been in training, and that will manifest. Or you will see your shadows more clearly than you've ever seen them before. And that will allow us to go more deeply into them and to heal them. Do either of those options sound like a bad thing? And so that's what you just presented, choosing to reframe even our challenges as these great gifts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that process. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a dance with fear, and that dance can be beautiful. It's anytime we're stepping in out of our comfort zone or into creating something great, we're going to be met with resistance. And that's where the growth lies.
What's one fear or one resistance that has come up in your life most recently? Because, you've been working with these principles for a while, but I don't want to speak for you, but for me, the learning's never done. There's always more layers. So is there anything that happened recently where you were like, okay, yep, this is here for Charles to work on right now? And would you be willing to share about anything in particular you've been working on healing for yourself?
Yeah, there's a couple things. The first thing that came to heart was the self-talk around me writing and publishing a book, right? It was like this brought up a lot of fear as to how it would be received. And so this wasn't recent, but years ago, it was the first thing that came to heart. I loved traveling the world. I was in Sweden visiting a dear friend with my brother, and we're experiencing just pure bliss, gorgeous day, waterfall coming down. We're having the best food at this picnic. We go cliff jumping into this ice cold water, and we're like laying out on this bedrock, just basking in the sun. And I was in such vacation vibration, like this just deep feeling of like, man, this is the same power that creates planets, like flowing to and through me. And I had this conversation with my higher self in that moment. My higher self was like, yeah, this is too powerful to keep in one body. Like, you have to share this. You get to share this. And so it was this realization that, I declared right there that I'm going to move through this fear of how I'm going to get published, how I'm going to write a book. I didn't even consider myself a great writer, but I declared right then that I'm going to get published this year. And I don't know how it was going to look or what I was even going to write yet. And so that declaration instantly brought up all the fear response. Like, I could witness my mind go down this train of thought, like, you're not a great writer. The self-critic got super loud, right? He was like, who's going to read this? How are you going to get it published? All these things, right? And I said, and I just watched each of those thoughts like waves floating by in the ocean, and came back to the seat of consciousness of being open to receive all possibilities of this happening. and allowing myself to receive the inspired action for that to occur. And so it was not long after I got home from that trip, and a guy named Tyler Wagner, amazing gentleman, reached out to me and sent me a message saying, hey, we are we're co-creating a book project, and you came highly recommended, and we'd love to have you in the project. And I was like, wait, pinch me, is this for real? And so I had this great laugh with my higher self in that moment of just releasing, dancing through that fear, just observing the thoughts that came up, and then opening up to all possibilities. And that's how we created the Better Business Book. And it's a collaboration of, over 100 co-authors, entrepreneurs doing amazing things in the world. And we each share one chapter of like the golden nuggets, right? So instead of having a shelf with 100 books on business that you have to read through all these pages to get to the good stuff, this is one book that has 100 golden nuggets in it from all these different entrepreneurs, and some of them are good friends of mine. And so that was a beautiful co-creation that was a lot of fun. And of course, my chapter is called Vacation Vibration.
Perfect.
and it's how to incorporate that feeling of that same like bliss and power that creates planets flow when it's flowing to and through us. How can we channel that into our creations? And we can do it as simply as creating intention. That same, coffee shop you go to that you've been to 100 times, right? You can go in there and experience Groundhog Day, order the same thing, have the same conversations with kind of going about it unconsciously. Or before you even step into that, you can set the intention. Like, I'm going to see this experience through the eyes of divinity and just share more love. And so you walk in, you have a conversation with the barista, you ask how she's doing, and you actually like really listen and really connect. And all of a sudden, new exciting conversations ensue and more people join over, and so it creates this novel experience at some place you've been to 100 times. And if anything, you end up getting a lot of free stuff. Like,
totally.
people just want to
have
this
totally
coffee's on me today,
muffins.
Like, yeah, it's amazing the how things shift with the power of intention. Yeah. And so that was like my own medicine to live a more intentional life and to live vacation vibration, how we can incorporate that into our lives, into our everyday experiences, and into our business. And it's fun. It makes everything more fun.
It's so fun. And I totally feel that you and your family embody that and live that way. And I think this is important for people to hear too, because when I first started learning about, I'm calling it the law of attraction, because that's a lot of these principles are from that. People go, okay, this is really out there. I'm just going to start manifesting synchronicity, and it can sound very ungrounded, but in reality, it's not luck. It's not, you can call it synchronicity, but really for me, what it is it's an unblocked channel of energy. It's an openness. It's a flow. You can go on a first date. You can feel if someone's open to talking to you or not. Are they an open person or a closed down person? This is just energy. So when you decide, that's the intention piece, to go out into the world living in love, emanating in love. And most people listening know what we say when we're talking about in love. We're not talking about romantic love. We're talking about the emanation of this capital L, pervasive love. And deciding, let me be a conduit for that today in whatever way. Just let my life touch someone like the breath of God, just for a moment, to just like lift a tiny hair of suffering off of them, to just bring a little bit more beauty into the world. And I think if you live that way, this is when the world just opens up and everything just falls at your feet for you to have what you want and for you to use your gifts to serve.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that lens of intention, whether it might be, I want to have more fun today, or I want to be more creative today, whatever lens you choose to put on, that sets your reticular activation system. It's science. It's like a radar system of our mind filtering through all the stimuli to what it is that we set our intention to,
Completely.
like what it is we're looking for. And that's how you can shape and create your life by design instead of by default. And so one of the first gifts I got from that was like trying that lens on of the eyes of divinity, just like putting on eyes of love. So all of a sudden it was like, wow, I started realizing like I can see all the greatness and the gifts in everyone and everything. And that was a gift of mine. It's like one of my superpowers was seeing people already actualized in their potential, what's possible for them. And then it's really easy to just invite them into that.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's almost like, because I have that psychology lens, I'm going, this is like confirmation bias, but in a beautiful, positive way. It's like, when people are trying to conceive, how they start seeing babies everywhere because their brain is just scanning for, oh my gosh, there's how all of a sudden are there babies everywhere? There was always babies everywhere, but now your brain's looking for it. So you look for a reason to feel good. You look for a reason to celebrate life, to celebrate beauty and our individuality and our gifts. And then your world reflects that back to you.
You will notice evidence of it everywhere you look.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
I want to go back to NeuroKinetic Therapy because you started talking about muscle testing. I'm familiar with muscle testing, but some people, again, are like, what does that mean? And say that someone listening wants to start working with their intuition, start working with muscle testing 101. Can you describe how we might start using that in our lives? How is that useful? And how could we practically implement it like right away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, muscle testing is basically bypassing the mind and tapping into the intelligence of the body. And the body knows what's best for you. It's like if it's a strong muscle test, then it's good for you. It's a yes, right? So when I first started playing with this, it was a game changer for me and saved me a ton of money because I was buying all these supplements at the time. And when I got good at muscle testing, I went through each one and realized that like 85 to 90% of them were not good for me and not like either neutral or not benefiting me.
So walk me through that process. Like you pick up a supplement.
Yep.
Then what are you doing?
There are a number of ways to muscle test. To self-muscle test, you can simply drop from your mind into your body. It's like taking an elevator from your head space, where we spend a lot of time, and into your heart space, and just offering the intelligence of your body. And you can notice which way you sway. So you can ask your body for a yes, and typically you'll begin to lean forward lightly, just naturally. You can ask your body to show you a no, and you might lean backwards. And so that's giving you your compass. And then you take a supplement or a food or a question, and you hold it close to your body and notice which way it sways. And then there's other ways to do it too, with your fingers and other ways of muscle testing. But that's a really simple way to begin.
So you almost run like this control first. The control experiment is talking to the body, saying, show me what a yes looks and feels like. And then you listen, you pay attention. Could be a leaning, could be like for me, when I'm muscle testing, I experience a yes as sort of a blooming sensation in the heart space. That's what it feels like for me, is like a fountain of kind of golden energy being like, yeah, more of this. And then the same for a no. And this is without holding anything at first, so you can get clear about the language your body is using to speak to you. And so I'm hearing you say, there's like a leaning away, or in my case, I often feel a contraction sort of feeling, a pulling away feeling, and that occurs for me in my gut. So I think that's cool. Like I've heard people say, well, for me, I get a twitch in my left pinky, and that's a yes or no. So I think that's important to say here is your body's going to have your own unique way of communicating to you, and to get to know that language first without anything. And then we can go to holding supplements, or, you and I had a little hot bay ceremony before this. We're muscle testing the hot bay. In the grocery store, I'm looking at, okay, I'm holding a red potato. Okay, I don't know if the starch feels great for me right now. Let's maybe put that back. And I'm muscle testing my food a little bit intuitively in the grocery store.
Amazing, right? And then you're tapping into your body's intelligence, your inner wisdom, improving your relationship with your intuition and connecting with your higher self, all from something as simple as muscle testing. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And it's easier to read those signals. And it's, if anything, it'll save you a lot of money with things that aren't actually good for you. And what's interesting is a medicine or a food might be good for you one day or one moment, and maybe not in another situation based on your constitution. And so
totally,
it's a really valuable tool. It's been a game changer for me and a lot of my clients.
What would you say to people who are listening to this? Because I agree with you, and the idea of like it's going to save you a lot of money because you're not going to waste on things that you don't need. Some people might feel like, well, this is just placebo. This is just a placebo effect. You're just deciding what you want to feel good about. How do you address that?
Even if it is a placebo effect, it's an effect nonetheless. That's what's so fascinating about placebo. It's like one of the first experiments on placebo was a very risky doctor that decided to do, all his patients were supposed to get knee surgeries for their knee pain. And yet he didn't actually do the surgery, but they thought they went in the surgery. Right. And so, and a huge percentage of them were like fully recovered. And so it's fascinating, right? Like, so sometimes I like to joke and say, it has a really strong placebo effect.
No, it's a really good point. A really good point. And I've thought about this when people ask me about pulling oracle cards or tarot cards. And like, when you do that, Hallie, who are you? What are you convening with? Are you divining with spirits? Is it your higher self? Is it like, what are you looking for? And for me, I never really needed to define it like that. I wasn't interested in putting it into pigeonholing it like, okay, I'm speaking with my angels or whatever. And some people do, and that's fine. But for me, when I pull a card, I notice the visceral response within my body. So I ask for a message, or maybe I'm asking about a particular thing, person, a new project. And I subconsciously already have a bias, about what I'm hoping this card will say. If I'm dating a new person, it's like, I'm hoping it'll be like, give me the green light, or confirm maybe what I was already feeling, like, I don't know about this. So when we flip the card, it really just shows us more about us. It's data. It's more information. And I feel the same way about muscle testing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. My little angel, Sophia, our daughter, is 10 and a half months now, and she's already a little baby oracle.
Oh, yeah.
She's just feels right at home with divination cards, and we'll lay them out, and she'll pick you a card, and she'll specifically hand it to like certain people, like, here's your card. And she's been right on. Like, there's one time separate times she's picked the same card for me. Communion, and it's this Native American guy looking up and connecting with the eagle. And to me, it was like, oh, great, thank you. And I like enjoyed that experience so much that I didn't actually take it to heart and like get out and get the nature medicine I wanted, that I needed. And so she kept pulling that same card for me different times. And I was like, okay, I get it now. Thank you.
Your baby is so woke. Oh, I was telling someone about your child this morning. So I was just like, this baby, you look into her eyes. She's just so alert. She's so sweet and balanced. And I mean, I'm sure she's like other babies and that she has her moments, but she just seems so comfortable. And I know you just recently transitioned into fatherhood and both of you becoming parents. And I would love to hear more about that journey for you, what you felt like before in the lead up, what prepared you for that, and then what have been kind of your guiding principles as the most important things as a father that you're bringing.
Well, I'll start by saying, the initiation into fatherhood has been one of the most powerful initiations and beautiful initiations of my life. And I used to have this value of like freedom and independence I carried that very high through, being a bachelor and even stepping into partnership with my queen and that a lot of ways I designed my life to where, I had kept my bills low and I invested in experiences and seeing the world. And like, I knew that's where the gold was at for me. And so now that also I would try not to have too many responsibilities. I just found it was easier then, and that worked for me in that chapter of life. And now stepping into improving my ability to respond, also known as responsibility, as caring for this beautiful daughter and my queen and building a family, I've found that as I choose to take on more responsibility and upgrade my ability to respond, with that comes greater meaning to life, deeper meaning to life, and so much more. I'm just in awe every day of Sophia. She's just straight from source. She's like our teacher. She's reminding us of the ways of divinity, and so she inspires me every day to continue taking my own medicine and go down my path of my inner peace process. She inspires me more than ever because every time I get hit with a trigger or I have a heavy emotion I'm experiencing, instead I slow that process down with the power of my expansion breathing. And that allows me to take a look and notice from the seat of consciousness, my mind beginning to witness this uncomfortable feeling somewhere in my body. And then it automatically shows all the programs of coping and all the band-aids that it offers, right? Like go to the fridge really quick and fill it with something, or go on Netflix and escape from this feeling, and those old programs have been, I've chosen that unconsciously for so long that I know where that leads. And so now I choose inner peace process instead. And it's a journey of self-discovery to the source of where that trigger lies within me, where that heavy emotion resides. Is there stuck emotion? What am I to learn from this? And every time I take it through this process, it allows me to release a layer of that energy that no longer serves me. And that's another program that I continue choosing creator consciousness over the old, programming of consuming as a band-aid, instead going to the source of where it came from, releasing it through this process. And that's one less program that's been carried on, or negative belief system that's been carried on for generations. Now that doesn't have to move forward with my daughter any longer. And so that is super inspiring. And that makes me lean into and almost put on the lens of curiosity when I do get triggered, when I do have challenging emotions come up, and witnessing that and leaning into it instead, and going into it deeper instead of trying to just run from it, or, using the band-aids of the mind that the mind offers. It's
totally. So, and you use the term inner peace, and I know that that's actually one of your offerings, right? So you want to talk about that offering? And I also am curious if in that because I heard you say something like expansive breath, or can you talk more about that? Breath is something really important. We've talked about this on the podcast before, and I use a breath practice. I also have been teaching this in the Conscious Man about how to use the breath to stay present in conversation when we want to run away or stop listening, or we feel uncomfortable feelings in our body. I'd love to hear if that's something you go into in your Inner Peace program, and if you want to talk about what that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the greatest tools that's right under our nose this whole time, right? And for me, it helps slow things down. And as the Navy SEALs say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So I always love that, because it's basically like, if you're getting hit with something heavy, you can react with your old patterns, which is, the way of the mind, or you can slow things down and notice what's happening for you. And it might be really uncomfortable to do that. But what I've found is every time I choose that, use this tool of breath, expansion breathing it's like a balloon breath. Instead of just breathing anteriorly or vertically like some people do, it's allowing life force energy, specifically yours, which is typically your favorite color, to expand like a balloon through your entire being and even out into your auric field. And this creates a safe, healing sanctuary that you can create in any place that you are. And so that provides me a level of safety that allows me to stay in that fire or that trigger or that a little bit longer, and slows things down so I can see how it's happening for me. And then the Inner Peace process is a beautiful way to connect the dots. Our natural state is inner peace. Our natural state is harmony and at one with nature and one another and connection. And so there are often things that get in the way of that. And so instead of running from them, I choose this process to take a look at that, and what is it that we can learn from it? What is the source of this? And how can I release what no longer serves me? Take the golden nuggets, the silver and golden linings from the experience that I can then share with others to help them on their journey to complete that series of the hero's journey, only to begin another, right? And so it's a very in-depth but simplified process for connecting the dots as to, wow, I'm feeling this heavy emotion. Maybe it's grief. I use that example because I feel like our society in general is pretty bad at dealing with grief. And so imagine, wow, I get hit with a dose of grief. My mind offers, hey, this is really uncomfortable. Let's go do something to escape from it. And instead I just say, thank you, appreciate that Band-Aid. And instead let's go into the source of this. And that can take me on a deep journey, noticing within the body where that's showing up. Once you notice where it shows up, that gives you information, right? Is it in your second chakra? Is it in your throat? That's giving us intel. And then noticing, what is the emotion deep within that? What is the feeling within that? And when have you felt that before? And so going back to the root of when you experience something like that helps us connect to a younger version of ourselves. And this is what a lot of people are now diving into, the reparenting and the inner child work. And so this is a very simple process of doing that, to where you get to discover where love, safety, and support is needed most within you. And so for me, I'll give you the example of how I was able to heal my deep abandonment wound with this inner peace process. And this actually catalyzed and inspired me to create this, because that wound is so common in humanity. And for me, that was showing up in my life as I would fall in love with a beautiful goddess, and, I think she's the one, and everything would be great. And then little by little, eventually they would leave me. And this happened over and over again. And so by using this process, it helped me find the root of, wow, it was my 4-year-old that was experiencing this abandonment when my parents got divorced and my mom left. And I remember the color of lipstick she was wearing. I remember the leather coat, the smell of it that she was wearing when she said goodbye. And so for a 4-year-old to experience that on his own, taking on the blame, I'm supposed to keep this family together, like all these impossible missions of a 4-year-old, instead feeling this deep level of abandonment at that age. This is an opportunity through this process to go back and connect with him again and be there for him through that and provide what he needs. And the first time I connected with him, he was like arms crossed, back to me, like didn't want anything to do with me at first. And of course, right, I had abandoned him too. I hadn't connected with that version of myself. And so I sat patiently and would just continue connecting with him through this process. And little by little, he opened up. Before you know it, he's sharing and expressing that, he wants a hug, and that we get to share some tears. And then next time I check in with him, he's like at our old art table in that house that we could draw and just create on. And he was like excited to show me what he was creating next. And so that just made my heart melt. And now he's in a safe place in my heart. And what that shifted in my reality was that helped me take ownership in all those past relationships, noticing where I was subconsciously pushing my lover away. I got to take ownership and responsibility of those like immature ways that I was pushing them away, to recreate the familiarity of that pain and of that abandonment. Even though it wasn't serving me, the ego loves familiarity because it knows we can survive there. But we're not here to survive, we're here to thrive. And so this process was beautiful for me reconnecting with that version of myself, bringing that love, safety, and support to where it was needed most. Then what happens? Within 1 year, 2020, all these dreams just started coming true. It was like, year before that, right after that, I got really clear on what I wanted as a queen, as a family, and took some time with myself with that. And that was a beautiful journey because I energetically connected with my queen before I even met her physically. And then, that saga was just this beautiful, remembrance of one another, and like this beautiful love connection. And then getting to bring, moving, buying a house in Texas, near Austin, like all these things have been these great plot twists of very detailed visioneering that my queen and I did years ago. And like now we go back and listen to those audios that we visioneered, and it's like, wow, we're living it right now. It's amazing.
I love that term, visioneering. Yeah, I've never heard of that before, but I feel like I know exactly what it means. So the two of you would sit down, you'd voice note record together, and would you just dream out loud?
Yeah. So the key is, we get into a state where we channel our future selves, right? But you're actually saying it as it's in the present. So this might be a vision a year from now or 3 years from now, but we're saying it and taking turns sharing the details of that vision in real time. So that
the feelings, right? Like the embodiment of it, like the ecstasy of already having it.
That's
correct?
The key. That's the key, because then it's like inviting that into each and every cell of our being, experiencing the heightened emotions of that, how it feels, and then all the signs, synchronicities, serendipities, and opportunities show up for allowing that to happen. And so it's been amazing to witness like how fast these dreams can come true after releasing what was in the way. And so, it's so fun getting to share this with my clients now, because like, whether it's relationship issues or their relationship with money or, the abandonment wounds, like each layer that they release, that something new gets to come in that they do want after visioneering. And so it's just like we see it in nature, like the trees, they let go of their leaves every fall, because that allows them to grow deeper roots, longer and taller branches. But if they don't let go of that, then you can't allow for the new growth to come in. So we, as humans, tend to hold on to things much more than we see in nature. And so we can often be reminded how easy it is to let go And by doing that, it can be really exciting because then you have space to bring in what it is you ultimately want. And so the inner peace process is a powerful, simplified process for letting go and supplying that love, support, and safety to where it's needed most within yourself. And it's so cool to witness all the dreams that come true on the other end of that from the visioneering.
So cool. I love what you said earlier about like peace being who we are, peace being our natural state, and this idea of that's our 0 point. I very much agree with that. And I had a vision during a mushroom ceremony of how that is, or how that works, or how that manifests, at least in my life. And it's a metaphor that I use with clients as well, which is, we do. We're like, I got to make this happen. How do I plan this out? And this is all the mind, right? And you and I talked about this before we started recording about, leading from the heart and trusting in that space. And I think that that's where we're going as a species, is the pocket of awakening that we're in right now feels like it's about bringing the masculine and feminine energies of the planet back into balance and moving the energy from dominantly being in the mind space to passing through the prism of the heart and leading that way. And the image that I had in this ceremony was of an ocean, but like the view of kind of like you're an underwater camera and you're looking under the water, and your self has all these heavy buoys and anchors tethering you down to the bottom. But who you are is this buoy, but you're being pulled under. And these are our resistances, our limiting beliefs. You don't have to kick and scream and try to swim toward the surface to do. All we have to do is decide to cut the cords of the things that no longer serve us, the things that are limiting us. And then just naturally, we are peace. We are love. We float to the top. But it's these protections we put around us that are distortions of our pain. It's just pain that wants to be understood. And when we can bring that home and we cannot bypass it on ourselves and say, like, you should be over that happened when you were 4. Like, we understand and we feel compassion for ourselves. That's when we release these anchors one by one by one by one. That's the path of healing. And the more we allow ourselves to be in that state, then we get to live a life where we're just buoyant in love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that ocean analogy.
Yeah.
I'm a surfer, so.
Oh, cool.
Yes, absolutely. And even through a process like this, you can begin to see the belief systems that have been running, that are creating your reality, that are creating the suffering in your life, or the things that are going well, are all based on these deep-rooted beliefs that we created at a younger version of ourselves to cope with a situation, to develop strategies, to get through something at that age. And so, like, for example, my 4-year-old, after that experience of abandonment, it was the belief that was created, the decision I made about myself was that I'm not worthy of love or keeping love, and that love has to equal pain. And so by getting to reparent and go back to that version of myself, be there, holding space for him and allowing him to express that, and then bringing in new information, sharing with him, this isn't true anymore. And like holding his hand and getting him caught up to speed on everything we've accomplished, all the experiences of life, and coming back to the present. And now he feels integrated. And then, then the next work was on my 10-year-old, like there's always more layers to release. And so now I see it as a lens of curiosity, as like when these things come up, these heavy emotions we tend to avoid, or these triggers, I actually like find it fascinating and lean into it, because there's something to gain, there's something to learn from that, and then you can release it from its source.
There's something so powerful that you've said just now that I just feel needs to be underscored, because this is pretty expert level stuff, and there's an energetic nuance here with the healing. But you were talking about abandonment and how your story shifted when you were able to take responsibility for what was happening. And I believe that what often happens is we disempower ourselves by feeling victim consciousness. We're like, oh, okay, I keep getting left.
Right.
I keep putting my heart out there and these women are just leaving me. Like, the world is unfair. That feels so shitty. Like, I'm sure everybody listening has had a point in their life when they felt completely like they had no control. No one wants to feel that way. So the question then becomes, how do we empower ourselves? And it's that gentle space of like looking. And what I heard you say was, well, then I started to take responsibilities for ways that I might have unconsciously pushed these partners away to perpetuate my own story. And that is huge. But it's not easy to do, because I feel where some fall off the horse with that is they have the awareness, oh, I maybe was pushing people away. And then instead of feeling empowered in that and feeling like, okay, cool, I'm going to pay attention. They'll go into the space of blaming and shaming. Okay, wow, like I can't even get this right. And I don't know how to be with people, and I'm pushing people away. So this is like, I felt the need to underscore this because it's a tightrope. It's like, we want to take responsibility without going into blame. So can you find a space of compassion for yourself without enabling yourself and without beating yourself up? It's a very fine space to tune to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted that, because that is where a lot of people get stuck. And then it can easily go into, well, I pushed them away, so it's my fault. Or sometimes people will project it like, oh, well, she did this one thing to me, and and then you're pointing the finger, right? Then there's also those,
she deserved to be pushed away, that sort of thing.
And so while you're pointing your index finger, there's these at least 3 fingers pointing back at you as to the source of that, where it's basically like we're pointing to where we're giving our power away. And so owning up to that isn't always easy, but infusing forgiveness. That has been such a huge medicine on my path, is forgiveness. And then the 3 pillars I always come back to for up-leveled communication. And this is both with myself and with others. And these have changed my life considerably, and I'm still working on the mastery of them. And I feel like if everybody was able to master these 3 pillars of communication, we would experience world peace. And it's entirely possible, and it starts with inner peace. And the first one is, anytime you're engaging in a conversation, even with yourself, one is to seek to understand before the need to be understood. So it's like, instead of, we want so badly to like interject when somebody's sharing something, or like, oh yeah, I have a story like that too. Or like, no, I don't believe in that. Like, here's my opinion. Well, hold on. Have you actually like let go of what you need to say to be present to the information that's being shared with you? Like, can you really seek to understand before the need to be understood? And so that is a great practice in itself. And then once you get good at that, you start understanding into step 2, which is acceptance, radical acceptance of exactly who this person is and what the path they took to get to that conclusion might be as far from your truth as possible, yet that accepting them and their differences, that radical acceptance allows for like a beautiful balance and diversity. It's like, oh, I appreciate that you have this different perspective and that you walked this path to get there, even though that's not what I believe, yet I can honor and appreciate that, because it adds to the diversity of humanity. And then third is compassion. And that's simply from your heart, just sending this person love, unconditional love and compassion, even if what they're sharing is as far from your truth, you can still offer compassion. And that is super healing in any conversation. And that's the art of sacred space holding, is just offering compassion. And I would even argue that that is more powerful than empathy. And I actually choose compassion over empathy any moment, because would considered myself an empath. And as I began my healing journey and healed myself, began healing, helping others heal themselves, I was taking on a lot of other people's energy. And it's mainly in second chakra, my gut. And it was like this heroic, like, oh, I can take this pain for you. And instead, as I've gotten my practices down and dove into subtle energy body and how to clear and come into my sacred space and cleansing my energetic hygiene and really tapping into my energetic sovereignty as home base, it's much easier to see when I'm beginning to take others' energy on. And instead, I close down that chakra, second chakra, and open my fourth chakra and just blast compassion and just appreciation. And that's allowing them to be in their experience in a safe way that they can come to their own conclusions. They can come to their own realizations, and you're simply holding a loving and compassionate space for them to do that. And that's what can heal the world. That level of communication, those three pillars, if you started to see that more on like Facebook interactions and instead of all these, I'm right, you're left, even just the having to choose sides, like noticing that that's just brainwashing.
Totally.
It's complete brainwash that we've been programmed to have to choose sides. There's always another way. There's always like a neutral space. In religions, they call it the Tao, and it's the way. Yeah. And that's where there's actually the most potential of energy, because you're not wasting energy.
Right.
And then you can see things from a different perspective, and it's easier to access compassion from that place.
Right. Because you're not repelled or magnetized toward anything.
And as soon as I made that shift, wow, I feel like the level and the ability I had for helping others heal themselves like grew exponentially. Because when you come to your own conclusions, when you have a safe place to express something, and then you're able to come to your own conclusions without people giving you advice or telling you what you need to do, then it actually can become embodied much more easily than if somebody's giving you the answer or telling you, simply guiding them in a beautiful way to the answer that they already know. And once they receive that and remember that and experience that, then it's so much easier to embody. And then their life shifts from there. So it's super powerful.
That first pillar feels like it is basically a paraphrase of the St. Francis of Assisi prayer. I don't know if you're familiar with that prayer, but there was a few months that I was saying that prayer every single day when I was working with ayahuasca. And one of the lines is, grant that I may seek to understand rather than be understood, and to love rather than to be loved. For it is in giving that we receive, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful sentiments, absolutely powerful and very necessary. As we're wrapping up and coming to a close here, again, what you offer is just so dynamic, and there's just so many things that we could continue to talk about forever, I'm sure. But you mentioned the inner peace, you mentioned the NeuroKinetic Therapy, and then I know you have something called the laser focus method. Would you be willing to talk about that for a bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, the laser focus method I developed when I realized that in every moment when you get hit with those challenging moments, you can choose your old patterns, or you could choose to consume, which we've been conditioned to doing in this society, or you can pause and choose to create. And that step, every time you step into creator consciousness, it's choosing the path of long-term fulfillment. It's being the apple tree that creates apples to create apples, not worrying about who likes the apples or who's going to eat them or anything, right? It's just creating to create because we are naturally creators. And we've been pulled down the path with the high level marketing and just deceived that we're broken and that we need these external things to fix us. And so the laser focus method is a way of cutting through distractions and upgrading your level of focus to choose creator consciousness over the consuming conditioning. And it's profound. It was a really fun program to design. And now I offer it as an online recording, and it's a game changer. It's like taking what we normally get distracted from and learning through this Jedi mind training how to cut through those distractions and how to continue choosing to create more. And then it's fun to see like, oh wow, these are this whole list of things I've wanted to create and share with the world before I go to my grave. Right? And so that leads to long-term fulfillment. And sometimes if you choose the consumption, that's fine. That's the short-term satisfaction or fulfillment that's not going to last very long. Right? And that leads kind of in a downward spiral often, and as to needing external things. So this is about self-sourcing and tapping into that visioneering of what it is you want to create in this life, and those key things, those gifts that you've gained along your path that you want to share with others and to help them on their journey and just continue to create more. I mean, we're all just powerful creators. We just forget, and it's okay to forget as long as we remember. And so the laser focus method is about increasing that level of productivity by cutting out what's not needed. And it's fascinating because we're so aware now of like, oh, where I spend my dollars, that's where I'm voting, right? If I'm going to McDonald's, I'm supporting this corporation, right? That's, might be poisoning a lot of people. And so now we've gotten more conscious about that, right? Like what we're investing in with our money. But how conscious are we with where we're giving our attention? Because where our attention goes, our energy flows, and our energy is probably the most valuable asset.
Yes.
And so why would we give that away to things in consumption patterns when we can use that to create something great?
I love that. Your energy is your most valuable asset. Powerful. So where can people find your programs? Will you give us your website and if there's an Instagram to follow?
Absolutely. So easiest to reach out through Instagram, charlesclay.coach, and Facebook. You can find me there as well. Shoot me a message. Any of this resonates with you, inner peace process, NKT, or even the laser focus method, just shoot that to me in a message, and I'm happy to connect. If it resonates, I love connecting with my audience and hop on a call, see if and how I can help you. And then if anything, even if I can't, there's just a wealth of resources so I can steer you in the right direction. And if I want to leave with one message, that would be, have the courage to ask for help when you need it. There's so many resources and we're all in this together. And so trying to do it all by yourself, that's like the old way of evolving slowly.
Totally.
I've been there, and it's a lot harder than having the courage to reach out and ask for help when you need it. And you can check out charlesclay.coach. That's another website that's up. And I'm happy to connect. It's fun.
Sweet. Yeah, I love what you're saying about reaching out for help. And I was telling you right before this, I was on a discovery call with a new client, and we were having this same conversation about being sort of a martyr, a spiritual martyr, working really hard, going through your awakening, getting some sense of what the Dharma is, what your gift is that you're supposed to deliver to the world. And then I believe that we have to cross this threshold. It's an initiation. When you learn to ask for help, it is a declaration of self-love. And it comes with the understanding that we did not incarnate and embody to suffer alone.
Mm-hmm.
If we were supposed to be here alone, you would be the only person on earth, and we wouldn't need to procreate or have relationship mirrors or be together. It would be a different construct.
Absolutely.
So we're here to be together. We're here to help each other. And how you know where your personal flavor of help is what resonates. So I really want to encourage anyone listening who's hearing your message and who's seeing parts of themselves in you, or that future self that they're visioneering, something is coming through in your voice, to reach out to you and really draw on this beautiful wisdom that you've shared with us today. And Charles, I just want to thank you so much for this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.